Happy National Poetry Month, everybody. It's, as Eliot calls it, the cruelest month. I'm going to read from my 3 books of poems, or 2 books and a chapbook that have come out since 2022. My first book of collection of poetry that was ever published was A Home to Crouch In. Cajun Mutt Press was the first one to ever take a chance on my verse. And it was also during National Poetry Month back in 2022. Remember how excited I was to get my first book published. And it did not exactly set the world on fire. No reviews, good or bad, nobody seemed to notice it. But isn't that the fate of most poets? Seems like they never make it till they're dead. First poem I think I want to read y'all is titled Another Revolution. Let's see if you can guess who this is about. Another revolution. You guys are getting soft. 245 years ago, you won it all. Then, 85 years later, you put up a serious fight but lost. But then, this year, all you did was steal a lectern from the speaker's office and got yourselves thrown in jail. Revolutionaries aren't what they used to be. Now it's kind of a silly joke where a body count of 4 is more horrendous than a body count of 400,000. The future for revolutions is looking pretty damn dark if they depend on revolutionaries. See if y'all can guess who that was. And then Natty Daddy, 8%. The nuclear family. What's a nuclear family? Living in the suburbs, mom, dad, and 2 kids. Bicycles along their side on top of a neatly trimmed lawn. Here's my poem titled The Nuclear Family. He says that he's homeless and his RV got impounded. At one time, some years ago, he operated the propulsion plant of a nuclear-powered attack submarine. A machinist mate, as he was called. It ain't easy to get a job as a machinist mate for a nuclear-powered submarine. A high ASVAB is needed. Then you have to get through boot camp. Then 2 years of intensive training where a significant percentage of candidates fail and are sent out to the fleet at the needs of the U.S. Navy. He had the brains and discipline to get through all of it. Chasing Soviet submarines, being chased by Soviet submarines, silently and out of sight underwater all over the world, they are the cream of the Navy's crop. So to see him here now, black gaps in his smile, sores on his face, unruly hair halfway down his back, an odd chemical odor emanating from him is tragic and bewildering. How does someone this intelligent become such a dumbass? He says it doesn't bother him. He says he will be back on his feet in no time as long as he can find an employer that doesn't require pre-employment drug screening. Ha ha. I say glad to hear it and walk away before he can ask to borrow money or sleep on my couch. National Poetry Month. There's a lot of poems that talk about the trouble with poetry and how all the poets are just terrible writers. They all just suck. They're terrible. I always wondered about that. You read it in the poets' letters and in their poems and in their diaries, how everybody's just so terrible and the world just don't recognize them. Unfair. So I decided to write another trouble with poetry poem myself. All those poems about the trouble with poetry. All those good poets ranting about incompetent poets. I just realized they're ranting about me. It's me who sucks. It's my lines that are stupid. It's my poems that are giving poetry and poets a bad name. My puny vocabulary has betrayed me as a self-deluded pretender. If only I had a metaphor to describe my complete lack of metaphor, I could make amends with the aggrieved. The editors roll their eyes at another of my submissions. Why can't he commit suicide like a good writer, they moan. Aren't there natural gas lines leading to his room? A high enough bridge in his neighborhood? The least he could do is swallow a martini olive toothpick to stab his bowels and give him a slow death. If only I'd write a decent poem, then millions of readers would flock to buy their $15 books of poetry. I have ruined it for them. Fuck 'em. They love hating idiots like me to kick around in their verse. So as you can tell, I'm not really kidding too much there. My poetry isn't very poetic, very prosy. Now, a little over a year after that one came out, a new publisher showed up on the scene. They were called Naked Cat Press. Look at that. And they're written in white. Naked Cat Press. And they enthusiastically published this here chapbook of mine. Look at that good artwork on the cover. They were new and they got in over their heads. So what they did, they reached out to other poetry publishers and they came in to help these two guys. They let them kind of take the reins, get their publishing act together. I think this was the first book that they published. They got in over the heads with subsequent books that came in. So what they did after the new editors came in to help these guys out, they turned over all the reins to them, to pay the royalties from Amazon Kindle and all this, except one very important rein. They did not give them the ones to pay the royalties. The new editors had no access to that. So these two, what they did, they absconded, but they still had the access to get everybody's royalties. So of course, all the authors rose up. They got the new editors, delete these books, get them off so these two scammers can't get our royalties. I did not. I specifically asked my editors to leave it up there. Reason being, this isn't publishable anywhere. You know who John Genet is. That's why this is called Genet and Me, Thieves of a Feather. John Genet, one of the most controversial writers of all time. His poems and stories, plays were along the themes of homosexuality, criminality. He was a criminal, always in jail. Matter of fact, in France, he had such a horrible criminal record during World War II, he was sentenced to be deported to Germany to a work camp. He knew what was going on. He was going to die. Sartre and Cocteau got him out of that. And they hated Genet. He was always causing them problems. You can tell, you can read the letters between Cocteau and Sartre. They thought Genet was a child. They were getting sick of him. They were tired of going to courts and judges telling him, Genet's the greatest writer ever. You can't have him in prison. Genet was a notorious book thief. A cop would catch him with a book under his arm. The cops knew him, so they would stop him. And Genet would say, I didn't steal this book. John Sartre let me borrow it. And then the cop would say, okay, we're going to go talk to him and see if he borrowed it. So he put Sartre on the spot. Sartre's got to sit there and lie to the cops. Yeah, I loaned him that book. Anyway, so I'm not going to read anything from this. This is very explicit. Talk about the minor petty crimes I committed, like I swiping a carton of cigarettes off the dashboard of a truck and shoplifting. I was never as serious of a thief as John Genet. Then again, I didn't keep getting my stupid ass thrown in jail all the time. So if you do buy this book, and I hope you do anyway, I don't get paid for it because the editors, Arthur and Ryan DeHart, out there scamming the royalties. Actually, I'm the only book they have, so if they're getting any royalties, it ain't much. You'll be helping to feed their gummy habit. They were always eating gummies. Now, my latest book came out just a few months ago, Chicken Bones and Snot Rags. And here's another trouble with poetry that I like to rant about. The poem I just read where everybody complains about how terrible poetry is and all this metaphor, simile, rhyme, modernism, obscurity and all that. There's one thing none of you poets complain about. I've never heard anybody but me complain about this, and that's the acknowledgments page. You keep repeating yourselves in your books. You submit poems all year to your magazines, and then you compile them into a book. So we've already read all your poems. Once I checked out a Billy Collins book from the library, and as I'm sitting there reading it, I said, God damn, I must have already checked this book out. I've already read all this. Went to my laptop, checked my checkout history at the library. No, I had not checked it out before. It was just that he's repeating himself all the time. So that's the trouble with poetry right there, is you keep repeating yourself. Is John Grisham going to tell you the same story in his next novel? No. That's why he keeps selling millions of novels. He doesn't repeat himself all the time, okay? Chicken Bones and Snot Rags is all new poems. Nobody's ever seen any of these before. As a matter of fact, I have not submitted poems to magazines in probably more than a year now. I need to get back to that. Any of you magazines out there looking for some prosy-like poems, hit me up and I'll send you a submission. Here's one poem that's laying around after I got old and found it in there and included it in this book, called The Aged Good Time Boy. My biceps were once bulging and my deltoids round. I rarely paid for drinks at bars, lounges, clubs. My scalp produced impossibly luxurious hair. Those days are long gone, my scalp now visible through thinning hair, flat buttocks unable to fill jean seats. It's not the crowd that I join at the busy bar, it's this empty room and blank walls as I gulp the wine, beer, whiskey alone, completely forgotten by the crowd. But I remember them. My weakened bladder keeps me running to the toilet 4 times an hour. Turning to the mirror shows diminished biceps and deltoids. No one in here to buy me drinks. There's the high blood pressure, the diabetes, the blurry vision. But other than that, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Late wisdom arrives, and it's always late, and you get back to your true self. Don't really miss those days in the clubs around here in Hillcrest. Walk in with a tank top in a gay bar, big guns showing and all that, and people just want to buy you drinks and just let them do it. 8% Natty Daddy. Here's one of these poems from, I probably wrote this, I don't really remember, back in the 1990s, called The Help Wanted Ads. Sunday mornings walking to the 7-Eleven for the big fat Sunday paper. That's when there was page after page of help wanted ads. The old days, pre-internet days. So I did not write it back then. I wrote it after the internet. Okay, back to the poem. I wanted a lot of money for little work, so I flipped to the telemarketing section every week. Ad after ad with promises of big bucks. All I had to do was smile and dial. I smiled and dialed. The big bucks never arrived. I must have went through 20 telemarketing jobs in 3 years. Finally, I got a job as a shipping clerk. Escaping telemarketing was the happiest day of my life, even if all it did was lead to less misery. Then, like video to the radio star, smartphones killed the telemarketer. 20 years after my last telemarketing job, some ex-coworker spotted me in a bar. He must have recognized my pockmarked face. I had no memory of him at all. He never got another job after all the boiler rooms closed down. He's homeless, sleeping on the streets. You people getting your dinners interrupted 20 years ago finally have your revenge. Now, this is a true story, by the way. This guy, he met me in an alibi bar one night. I didn't recognize him. He called me by name, talking to me, sat right next to me, and thought it was odd. Before I got up to leave, he held up his phone and said, let's switch telephone numbers. So I gave him my number. About 5 o'clock in the morning, my phone is ringing, and he's disguising his voice. He said, hey, my buddy, I lost his phone. Is it okay if I give it to you and you give it to him? What a dumbass. See, that's what telemarketers do. Life is a scam to them. Anyway, after that, he sent me a Facebook friend request, too. I just deleted it. So everybody got your revenge. The telemarketers have been shut down. Now all you got to do is not respond to these phishing things in your email or your social media. All right, let's close up here. This is from my first book of poems. This is one of my favorite poems I ever wrote. It's called A Toast to the Finest. We'll never know each other. There are no conventions we attend. there's no secret handshake, no slogan. But to those who need no spouse, who have no relatives, who neither need nor desire neither friends nor lovers, and walk this solitary road, from behind these walls I drink to you tonight. All right, happy National Poetry Month, assholes. Let's get out of here.